Let's talk a little bit about this concept of suggested pricing. So the first thing I'll say is if we go into the details tab here to look at the individual line items that are already existing within this event. There's various details here that have been uploaded, so I can upload via template or they can come in via an integration. But what we're doing is we're taking a unique approach to cost theory. And what I mean by that is if we think of a historical, I would say, ballparking or price determination estimate, there's a couple ways that we can go about this, right? We can do a should costing, which would entail a sort of market analysis or cost breakdown. We can look at last price paid or current market prices by appeal to certain indices. Well, and you can drive price by bidding as well, competitive bidding. Now, those are, I'd say, three primary drivers for price determination. Certainly other things will come into play like quality, lead time, availability, risk, reputation, values, etc. What we're saying is, look, there are certain things that you can do and there are certain things that we can do to help you. But let's say that we're running this event and you might have done a should costing or you have some sort of framework for what something is going to cost. You can certainly baseline that to that value. We can automatically bring in a last price paid or a current market price. We have the ability to come up here and generate baselines based on that historical information, and that can be very helpful for a lot of people so far as that is a recent price paid. Now, where it gets tricky is if you've never bought something before, or perhaps there is just no frame of reference for it because it might be complex, or if you have bought it before and that was so long ago that given historical market trends, inflation has made that last price irrelevant, well, you can defer to the supplier for that baseline price. So we would invite them to participate in a bid submission to where their first round bid will be within a pool of other bidders where the lowest bid would then become a baseline price. Where I say this is only the beginning or just a starting point is in reference to the fact that that doesn't get you to the finish line, right? So when we think of a baseline price, that sort of ballparks or estimates where a negotiation should begin. And we're going further to say, look, you can come up with a baseline, the supplier can provide a bid, we'll take the lowest one, or we can provide you the last price paid. But from there, we want to actually derive a suggested price. And so what we're doing to this end is say, look, we've trained our models on millions of lines of publicly available transaction data. And so with that machine learning, we've been able to identify different patterns and correlations between unit of measure and quantity that let us predict or sort of take a probability assessment of how much price movement you could anticipate given some of the line item attributes of the transaction itself. Now from there, there's other things to consider. Well, who's within this event? Who's participating in this? What are the supplier's behavioral tendencies? So when we think about behavioral science, as I'd mentioned earlier, well, each individual human being at all of the various organizations you're buying from have different factors that influence their willingness to negotiate and influence how competitive they might be. And so we're looking at those behavioral attributes within the context of the sourcing engagement history, as well as different attributes around the level of competition, the number of folks within the event, and game theory, looking at how can we optimize outcomes by virtue of all of that data that is then slowly over time being improved by machine learning to derive a suggested price per unit for each line item. And what I mean by that is, so we've got the baseline, and this has been generated by any of the three different ways I'd mentioned before. And what I want to do is to say, okay, well, if that is the baseline, then what we can reasonably predict is that given the individuals participating in this event, we think that $316.12, for example, is actually a little high because all things considered for that item, we think you can actually get that for $307.55. And so it's through this combination of combining these details to arrive at a suggested price per unit that we're then going out to market on your behalf. We're actually going to propose this price to your suppliers within the context of a competitive engagement.